Hello and welcome to the second session of the A-level analysis of performance. And in this session, what we're going to be talking about, as it says there, is the development plan. If you haven't looked at part one, do take the time to look over the video and make notes, because some of the skills that you will have hopefully recognized in the first one will lend themselves to this component as well. So let's get started. As we have in the previous video, and what you'll need to do for your assessment is identify the weaknesses and the strengths, but what we need to do now is look at their main weakness. If we're talking about their skill main weakness, we have to turn around and say it is poor because. So I'm choosing here, let's say whatever skill that's supposed to be, I'm choosing it because it's poor, and then we need to talk about the preparation, execution and recovery of that. And that will justify the reason that I'm creating an action plan for them. So in this one here, you could easily be talking about preparation. They had poor footwork, they hadn't moved into position. The execution, their hands are very high, their body position's poor, they don't appear to be looking at the ball there during the execution. And then the recovery, we could also discuss that as well. So we're turning around and saying it is poor because. That's for the skill. Now exactly the same for the weakness. If you're going to choose fitness as one of the weaknesses, it is poor because what? So it may be that they were unable to get past the defender with the ball. So they've got good control, but not acceleration. So therefore that is their main weakness. And what you're going to do then is say, so it's for this reason that I'm going to create my development plan. And here are the main components of that development plan, and we'll be working through all of those. So let's just crack on. So let's say we're looking at the development plan for fitness. I've got to outline the aims and objectives for the development plan. And what they ask you to do is by the end of a 2 to 3 month plan, the player should be able to do what? And we're not talking about, oh yeah, I want to get fitter, I want to have a beach body. It's got to be a lot more specific than that. So by the end of the 2 or 3 month training program that I'm going to devise for my player, they should be able to, and depending on what component of fitness you're going to choose, you would then say reduce the 30-minute sprint by 0.3 of a second, complete an extra 500 meters on the Cooper run, or standing stalk for an extra 5 seconds. Just examples of tests and then results that you would expect them to do once they've completed your plan. Really specific though, don't be generic, and also name the test. So if you're doing a development plan for skill, the aims and the objectives, so by the end of the 2 to 3 month program, the player will be able to, and I've made this one up, but I think it's really appropriate. So complete 20 backhand overhead shots into the tram lines. So obviously I'm going to be working on their backhand, and I've set up a test or a situation. Now they've got to complete 20 backhand overhead shots, and they've got to be able to get it into the tram lines. That is my aim. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. Really specific ones. Here's another one. So complete 10 successful tackles in this tackle drill. So I'm sure you'll have loads of different drills that you could use for your aims and objectives within your chosen sports. There's just a couple of examples. And the other thing it had on there was the time scale for the plan. So the other thing that we need to be able to do is just outline how long we're going to be doing the plan for. So for example 2 to 3 months. So why are you doing that for that period of time? And here, as it's highlighted on this one here, why is it appropriate to spend the length of time on improving this particular area? So justify your time frame. So for that, I think what you're talking about is the physical adaptations that are going to be taking place. So you could talk about the neuromuscular in relation to the speed of the electrical impulse. That's going to be able to speed up if I'm doing if I'm doing sprint training or reaction time. And what's going to happen to my muscles, what's going to happen to my cardiovascular and respiratory. Just be very careful with the cardiovascular and respiratory though, because those adaptations take a lot longer, don't they? Regarding muscles and speed, they're going to happen a lot quicker, but the cardiovascular and respiratory, just be very, very careful about that, about the significance. If you're only doing 4 weeks, how much adaptation are you actually going to see? But you can justify your time frame by saying that you're going to have physical adaptations taking place. So if you're doing strength, if you're doing endurance, And here, the other reason we can, the other way we can justify saying overload, I'm going to overload in the training, but I also need to give a longer period of time for a rest, for recovery. And then also the reason I'm doing a 2 to 3 month training program is allow enough time for progression to occur. So I'm overloading the muscles and then there is time for progression. There in itself are my key justifications. And I'm going to make it specific, progressive, allow overload to take place, prevent reversibility, and hopefully make it an enjoyable training session, so reducing tedium. Okay, let's move on. Justifying the time frame for skills, we can easily turn around and say the physical adaptations, that's okay. But I can, with this, I'm allowing them to develop from the cognitive to the associative to the autonomous phase. You could argue that I need to have, first of all, practice in a closed area if it's an open skill, and then progress this into practice into open environments if indeed that's relevant to your particular skill. But it gives me the time to be able to do that. So moving from there to there, justifying why I'm taking as long as I am over my training program. Okay, so that's for the skill. All right, and then what I'm going to do then is turn around and say I will outline the drills I will use in more detail within my plan. So frequency, duration, and focus of my session. So the next part here. So here we're talking about how often I'm going to be doing it, and again we're trying to justify that. So state the amount of sessions, justify the amount of sessions. And here's an example. I will do 3 sessions a week because this will allow significant rest and therefore we'll be able to fully prepare for the next session so that they're well rested. I need to factor in that they're having other training sessions as well as other potential obligations. So it's the rest periods in between are going to allow them to be fully recover and therefore put as much as they can into each one of their sessions. The duration, I'm going to make it the session 40 minutes long because it's high intensity, so therefore they can't work for a longer period of time. Or I will make it 60 minutes long because it's continuous and we're looking for them to be able to work for a longer period of time. Some kind of justification. The other thing we also need to do is just give a focus. So what am I actually going to get them to improve? So I said focus of the session will be to increase the side tackling in rugby. So all I'm doing is saying to the examiner, this is what I'm going to do, this is how long I'm going to be doing it for. Okay, so here's quite the important part is the detailed progressive practices. Now, explain the drills that you're going to do, give the aim of the drill, clear teaching points, and link to theoretical knowledge. So here you can use drawings as well, that's perfectly fine, but explain what your drill is actually doing. Make sure that you give the perfect model. So if we're talking about dribbling or shooting, you need to be turning around and saying, okay, they've got to have the knee over the ball, shoulder in line with it, eyes on the ball as well. Give the perfect model. It's very important that you do that. So the aim of the drill is to improve the player's dribbling ability. In the first session they will need to dribble through the cones with both feet and then shoot at a goal. Okay, but then we need to have progression within this. So let's say that's drill 1. So what happens in drill 2? So to progress this within the session, notice that. I will then get them to dribble with one foot, their preferred foot, and then the final drill will be their opposite foot. But that's not going to take very long, is it? So to progress this further, I will get the players to work in threes. Each will have a ball. They will dribble through cones. Something that's going to progress it even further. And then I will finish with a condition where you have to keep the ball for 3 seconds. So again, we're just trying to get them to dribble. If I was to hear that, I think that's a very well planned session. Okay, progression within the session is what I'm looking for there, and detailed progressive practice. Keys, the way that we can link this, obviously we would have bilateral transfer if we're moving from left foot to right foot, and the coach is using visual and verbal guidance to support the development of the stimulus response bond. 2 nice easy ways that we could integrate theoretical knowledge. Okay, and then how would you make that session harder the following week? What I don't want to hear is this, and the examiners don't either. I'll make it harder each week by increasing the amount of cones, and then I'll put them into a game. No, we hear this too often, and it's not detailed enough. So here's an idea. Look, so start the session with dribbling through the cones with the weaker foot. So that's different from the week before. You can increase the distance between the cones, ensuring they then have to increase the pace. So that's what's changed. And then I would get the players to receive the ball, turn, then dribble. So here again, you can use a drawing to allow you to explain what your drill is referencing, but it's different. It's progressive from the previous one, not just I add a defender, then I put them in a game. Detail is absolutely essential. No detail, and then you're going to reduce your score. Okay, so the detailed coaching points, as I mentioned before, you've got to be talking about these. Don't neglect the fact that I want to know, and you have to know, detailed coaching points for your particular skill. And that's fine to turn around and say that, but what about doing this? Preparation, execution, and recovery. So what would the skill look like if it was done really well in the preparation, execution, and recovery phase? That's going to be a better answer. It's as simple as that. Okay, so during that drill, you can turn around and say that what should actually be happening in the preparation, execution, and recovery phase. So if we're looking at detailed progressive practices, if we were thinking about the fitness components, things that we need to be able to do is the exercise performed, you've got to give the relevant teaching points. So it's got to be shoulder width there, abs engaged to have a nice flat back if you're talking about a press up. And then how is this going to improve the person's performance when they're actually playing? Link it to that and you're going to score well. Okay. With the fitness, you have to be mentioning the increase in the reps, sets, and the session, and give me an explanation of why. So you're only increasing it by 2. Well, why? Why not 5? Why not 10? And again, so you can make reference to making it progressive, increasing the amount of overload, and reducing the reversibility. There is the justification. Again, do that and you will score better. So let's say, for example, the following week I'm going to do 15 push-ups. This is going to increase muscular endurance, and I'm going to increase the amount by 10 per week. The justification is it's going to create overload and it reduce reversibility. There you go. All right, now what we need as well is potential adaptations to the development plan. Let's turn around and say, for example, that the person's really, really struggling, or they're finding it really, really easy. It's cruising. We need to be able to turn around and say how we potentially change it. So how many sessions would I do? And give examples. So I would reduce the amount of sessions. By how many? And just say, for example, from 4 sessions to 3 sessions. And the reason I would do that is because. What will this do to the client? Will it give them more time to recover in between, but I can then still maintain the intensity during the actual sessions? Or it might be increase the time of the sessions because they're finding it too easy. So that's going to increase the amount of overload. How are you going to be able to check that? So there's increasing the intensity of each one of the activities. That's great. So I can make it harder. Fine. But let's then think about this. The Borg scale, which is a perceived exertion rate. So we can say that we could use that to increase the intensity as opposed to I'm just going to make it harder. Well, we can measure that level of increase in intensity by using the Borg scale there. Again, if you're doing fitness, it's got to be reps and sets over what period of time. So be really specific about how you're going to increase or decrease the sessions. And then lastly is how to improve or how that could be measured. Sorry. And what we're talking about here is testing. So press ups, sit and reach, Harvard step test. So they're all fine for the fitness components, but we can come up with different drills for. Yeah, and we can do exactly the same for skills there. So we can create a tackling practice, or there's a dribbling practice, and we can just say you need to increase it by the amount of tackles that you make or the amount of successful dribbles that you make. It's entirely up to you, but you need to have some kind of test at the beginning. I would recommend in the middle and then also at the end, just to be able to check what their progress is. So absolutely essential that you have testing in there as well. Okay, so quite a lot of information, but go back over the screencast, tick off each one of the different sections, and then I'm sure you'll have a very, very successful analysis of performance. Good luck and thanks very much.